Tell me that. The home stretch. Turn your Bibles to 1 Peter chapter 1. 1 Peter chapter 1. Begin with verse 3. While we're here on this earth, what are we designed to do? What are we designed to be? Like I mentioned, there's a phone that could cost $2,000. It could do everything. What did God design? What is this earthly experience really all about? Why are we here? What's our purpose? People want to make heaven on earth and have a kingdom on earth, but that's not going to happen. This earth is really nothing but a test to do what? See whether or not we fit in, if you will, up there. What does it take to be able to develop an appetite for something? How many of you grew up just loving broccoli? You did, really? I didn't. But you know what? You see me eat broccoli the other night. Didn't have to put cheese on it. You know what happened along the way? The wife that died, she was sneaky. She's a pretty good cook. She fixed chicken casserole. You know how preachers like chicken, don't you? But after a while, I started to notice this dark stuff in it. What is that? Ah, it don't matter. You know what I found out it was? Broccoli. And the more she fixed that, the more this dark stuff started showing up. After a while, it was, as the recipe called for, a chicken broccoli casserole. Sneaky. I said, this ain't so bad. I got to where I could eat salad with broccoli. I developed an appetite for it. How did it work? Well, it started out a little bit slow, but think about what it would take to want to go to heaven. What do you think is going to be in heaven? Well, the Lord's going to be there. Anybody excited about worshiping with all the redeemed of the ages? Would that to get you excited? What about for those people who, after 25 minutes of preaching, y'all today will be able to handle 4 hours. That's a lot of teaching. 4 hours. How many hours a day in the school of preaching? 6 hours?
Yeah, it was like 8 hours a day at school of preaching.
And you did it how many years?
2 years.
Whew. How could you do that? How could you develop an appetite for that, Jesse?
You.
Well, see, that's the mind is capable. The mind is capable of doing that. I mean, if you got something that you like, can you not grow in that? It's like, in the Navy, when I meet Chief Petty Officer that had a chief's initiation, and they make you drink this Trucid before your trial, and they were going to put something in my drink, all this hot stuff, and my chief said, he doesn't drink. And the guy said, he doesn't drink alcohol? He doesn't drink coffee either. What's he doing in the Navy? Is what somebody asked. So I grew up for 74 years. I didn't drink coffee. What do I enjoy now at night? My cup of what you got me for Christmas. A little coffee maker. Now, how long does it take me to make my coffee? It takes a while. But you know what? It's worth it. 74 years, for 64 years, I could have had that stuff. But now I acquired a taste for it. It's pretty sugared up. But I mean, see, that's life. You can acquire a taste for something if you want to. The Bible is intended to help us to acquire a taste for what? The things that really matter. How valuable are things in this world? Think about the war that's going on. We're a physical being and also a spiritual being. We're twofold nature. Which one's more important? Do we act like it? No, there's this war. Should we feed the spiritual or the food? Well, both need food, but where does the overwhelming majority of people spend their time and influence? Feeding the physical body. Now, if you don't if you don't eat, after a while, your hunger is going to say, "Eat, fool." You're going to do that. But see, the soul doesn't always do that, but it needs it. Think about in World War II, there were famous battles. Anybody ever heard of the Battle of the Bulge? I mean, they were famous being Navy guys. There's Battle of Midway and Coral Sea and all that kind of stuff. But think about the battle line in Christians. God is trying to get us to decide correctly, are we going to live for today or live for eternity? Which one's better? Should we be living for comfort or character? Which one's most important? She'll be learning to live for what's holy or what makes us happy. You see the point? There's this war that's going on. Paul talked about that war. And so it's a war that goes on, but the Bible is intended to get us to prioritize what's the most important thing in the world. How important are relationships? I do that when I'm teaching kids. I mean, think about girls. She's a 16-year-old girl, and there's 15-year-old hormones and running rampant. You ask a girl, who would you like to date? Let's make a list of what you want. What you think's topped on the list? He's good looking. You think that's way up there? He's got a good personality. He's got a car. He's funny. So which one's most important? If you had a choice of marrying a guy who was a 10 out of 10, I mean, there was nobody in all the world better looking than him, but you knew he's going to run around and have 4 affairs in the first 5 years of marriage, would you want him? Nobody says no. Yes, why not? Or someone he's got a great personality, he's good looking, but you can't trust a word that comes out of his mouth. Which one's most important? I'll go through the list. It takes me about 45 minutes. I put all these attributes up that they should be going for. All these, I want him to love me. What does that mean? That's cheap. So give me. I want him to be kind. You want him to help you do the dishes? Do I do the dishes? Yeah. I mean, what do you want him to do? How about helping out with the kids? You think he could ever envision him changing a dirty diaper? What do you want him to be as someone husband at home? And almost every single one of those things is a virtue of Christianity. So what's the moral of the story? I had good looks at the top of the list. Where should I put it? You know where they put it? Bottom of the list. Why? Because what matters most? After somebody's been married 7 years, what have they learned from the time they're 18 to 25? You think they have a better idea about what a good husband is? Sure they do. Life does that. What is the greatest price manual in all the world? Anybody old enough to remember White Stores? I started out working my way through college at White Stores. On Saturday, I was the idiot that changed prices. And remember all the ink on the top? The most expensive vegetable we had was green giant, what's that big? Asparagus. I don't like asparagus. But it was being jacked up to, it's a big old can, $1.19. That's a lot of money back then. So I had like 47 cans of asparagus. $1.19, what it's supposed to be. I made a mistake. A lady saw that, bought almost every can. She goes up to the cashier, and here it is, and it all said 19 cents. The dollar sign wasn't there. And she wanted to buy it for 19 cents. And the cashier said, they can't do that. Call the, it's the price. Call the manager. He said, it's on there. Sell it to her. 30 cans of asparagus, 19 cents. Where's Bill? Where's Bill? How would he know what the right price is? Years ago, somebody did this. They go into, before they had all the things and marking things, identify, when they had price tags, they go into a place like Sears and change all the price tags around. Instead of a $1,699 lawnmower, it's $39.95. Here's a pair of T-shirts, $64.95. Changed everything. Wouldn't that funny? How would you fix that? At White Stores, there was a price book. It sat on the manager's desk. Every single item had the listing, description, can size, stock number. Here's the price. It was the price book. Whatever that price book said, that's what it sold for. You know what the ultimate price book is? It's this book right here. This book teaches you the value of things that are most important in life. And that's our job, to get people to say, see, that's what life is all about, to help you to value. So after someone's gone through grief, lost a loved one, how are they different after 2 years? When they work through the other side, they're not the same people. What should they have learned along the way? What do you think death or a horrible marriage, somebody walks out, why do you think that's helped you learn? What have you learned from that? About value. You take someone who's been married and somebody runs around on them, what are they looking for again in the second marriage? He may not be as good looking as the first guy, but you took me, didn't you? I shouldn't say that. But I'm just saying you learn things. You value things. That's what the Bible's intended to help us do. What's the most important thing in all the world? Your soul is. What will you sell it out for? What's it worth? What did the Lord say? The whole world does not equal the value. When will people know that? One of my first sermons ever, I preached all of this is 5 minutes after you die. How smart you're going to be. What's wrong with that, though? 5 minutes after you die, what do you now know? Your value system has changed. If you're not a Christian, what do you now know? You blew it big time, and there's no way of doing anything better. So what's the Lord want us, as far as a goal for the Christian? Let's look at it, how Peter describes it. 1 Peter chapter 1, blessed be, verse 3, the God and Father of the Lord Jesus Christ, who according to his abundant mercy has begotten us again to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance incorruptible, undefiled, does not fade away, reserved in heaven for you, who are kept by the power of God through faith for salvation, listen to this term, salvation ready to be revealed at the last time. What do you think that'd be like? Now, we got a sense of salvation now. What will be salvation like one day when we're on the other side compared to today? When you know you're finally home? What's that like? I mean, we can imagine, there are good things here, but when you stand before the judgment bar of God, the Lord calls your name, welcomes you up, puts his arms around you and says, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Enter thou to the joys has been prepared for you. Your home. What do you think that'll feel like? But see, that's what he's talking about. It's coming. The Christian has that as an inheritance. But what has to happen first? Look at verse 6. There's two things mentioned about trials that are necessary to know. In this you greatly rejoice, though now, for a little while, if need be, you've been grieved by what? Various trials. There are two things about trials mentioned there. Did you pick it up? Two things about trials, the nature of it mentioned in that text. Did you see what they are? If need be, what does that mean? If you've learned a certain lesson, you don't have to have any more lessons on that. But if you need this lesson, guess what you're going to get? And how long do they last? Comparatively speaking. A little while. They don't last forever. We may think that they do, but that's the term given. That the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it's tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ, whom having not seen, you love, though now you don't see him, yet believing, you do what? You rejoice with joy inexpressible and full of receiving the end of your faith. It's going to be great. See, the more you think about heaven, how does it help things here? It helps your value system. Have you ever gone through something that was hard because you knew it was about to end and you had some good reward? I spent 5 years in the U.S. I knew when I left, I had no intention of staying in the Navy after that. Going to sea, imagine being locked up in a submarine, no sun for 72 days. There are no nights off. You work 14 hours, you sleep 4, 14 hours, sleep 4 for 72 days. That's not easy. And you go hard. No nights off, no weekends, no phone calls home, no TV, no nothing. For 72 days. My last patrol, I knew the last time I'm going to do this. I was what's called a short timer. You know how short I was? I'd ask people, you know how short I am? I could sit on a dime and dangle my legs over the side. That's short. That was the hardest patrol I ever had. But in one way, it was the easiest. You know why? I had my no more book, no more of this, no more of this, no more of that. Why did I get through that last patrol, which was hard, easy? Because I knew it was coming to an end. It was going to be over. And sometimes when you think about people who get older, and I didn't understand it then, I do now. As people get older and mature in their faith, what makes the brightness and the glow and the drawing power of heaven brighter now than it did when you were 25? My body hurts. Tell her what my knee's like. I got a stiff leg. I've had knee replaced. It's not going to fix it. When I get out of the car, I have to hop because I can't bend my leg. There's a lot of things that don't hurt, but they don't work. As you get older, what happens to your body? You know one thing that's inspiring to me about heaven? I don't have to worry about that anymore. You know another thing that inspires me about heaven? I'm tired of seeing people sin. I'm tired of the heartbreaks. I'm tired of what my granddaughter has to face because of a sorry dad, how he abuses her. I get tired of seeing sin. I get tired of seeing lazy people in the church. I get tired of seeing government officials do what they're doing or not do what. I get tired of all the heartbreak. Do you? There's a day coming. Don't have to worry about that. There's a drawing power to me. I see why. The guy who was my mentor, when he was told, he was someone who was helpful to me on a Monday morning. He found out he had liver cancer. He was so weak. Was told he might die. 6 months later, he called me on a Thursday and said, would you come by the hospital? I want to talk to you. He said, is it wrong for me to pray? I want to die now. I don't want to live 6 more months in this. I want to die now. I said, you're asking me. I don't know anything. Pray what you want to pray. Within 2 weeks, on a Wednesday afternoon, his daughter called me and said, LB's going. They said, he won't last the night. He wants to see you. I've never, ever in my life seen anybody who was crying, weeping, tears of joy because he knew he was going to be dying that night. Before I got back to the building, he died. I'll never forget that scene. I long to be like that. That's the way Christians used to live. Heaven was so beautiful, so profound. They were willing to go through what they ever to go through to learn to want to be there. That's what the church needs to see today. But to get there, what do you have to go through? Hebrews 5, 8, and 9. What did the Lord have to learn? How did the Lord learn what he did? Look at it in your Bibles. How did the Lord learn? He got some extra training. He knew everything when he was here, but there were still some things he had to go through to make him complete. What was it? Hebrews 5. He became the author of eternal salvation to all those who obey him. What helped him learn those things? Before he became the author of eternal salvation, what did he learn? He learned obedience by what, folks? Read it. He learned obedience by the what? By the things he suffered. See, we don't like that word. How did suffering help him learn that? Think about that. How does our Lord today serve? 1 John chapter 2, verse 1 calls him our advocate. What qualifies him to be the perfect advocate to the Father for us when we sin? He knows what it's like in human flesh. He knows what it's like to be betrayed. He knows what it's like to be spit on, to be hit, to be abused. Every single possible pain level, emotional, he went through it all. And therefore he qualifies to do what? As a human being, he can say to the Father, he wants to be forgiven. Forgive him. Do you think God the Father will listen? Think what he went through. Now, here's a question. What does God the Son know that God the Father doesn't know? Think about that. What does God the Son know that God the Father doesn't know? What's temptation of what? What it's like to live in the flesh. He knows all of that. And he came to live that life for us. We went through this at school. I'm sure we went through these verses when Jesse was there. We want the good stuff. What was it that the apostles wanted as we close? The disciples, when Jesus started talking about this kingdom, what type of kingdom? Look at Matthew 16 real quick. What did they want? What type of concept of the kingdom did they want? After Jesus said, who do people say that I am? John the Baptist, who do you say that I am? What did Peter say? You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Blessed are you, Simon. Talked about some few things. And right after that, he starts out with this conversation. Look at verse 21 in Matthew 16. From that time, Jesus began to show to his disciples he must go to Jerusalem, suffer many things from the elders and the chief priests and scribes, and be killed and raised the third day. Peter took him aside and began to do what? Rebuke him. Who's doing what? Peter's rebuking the Lord. How smart is that? Saying, far be it from you, Lord, this shall not happen. He turned and said to Peter, what did he call him? Satan, get behind me. Why? Read the verse. Tell me what Peter's problem was. What did Peter want? An earthly kingdom. Where would the disciples be in the midst of all that? Way up, right hand, left hand. There you go, Lord. I mean, these were common everyday men, fishermen, tax collectors, Simon the Zealot, political guy. But now, as Jesus' head guys, they're way up in the kingdom. They never had power and glory opportunity like that. But if he's dead, what happens to that plan? It's shot in the head. And so he said, should that have been a memorable experience? Look at chapter 17. Verse 22, 23. Now while they were staying in Galilee, Jesus said that the Son of Man is about to be betrayed into the hands of men, and they will kill him and raise the third day. What was their response? They were exceedingly sorrowful. Look at Matthew chapter 20. Real quick. Finish it up. Look at verse 17. Out as he goes to Jerusalem to die. Now Jesus, going up to Jerusalem, took the 12 disciples aside on the road and said to them, behold, we're going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests, to the scribes, and they will condemn him to death and deliver him to the Gentiles to mock and to scourge him. And the third day he will do what? Rise again. So what's he telling them 3 times? I'm going to go to Jerusalem. I'll be killed. But the good news, I'll be what? I'll be raised the third day. So that should be in their mind, should it not? Luke chapter 22. The Lord is instituting the Lord's Supper. The last time they're going to be with the Lord. There were some things going on, an undercurrent among the disciples. Look at verse 24 and tell me what it was. Luke 22, verse 24. What are they doing? What's that? Arguing. What? Still arguing over what? I'm going to be the number one guy. I'll be in his right hand. Can you imagine how incensed that would be when the mother of James and John says, Lord, I got a request for you. When you start your kingdom, I want my boys, one on the right hand, one on the left. And the other guy said, that's just great. That's not what they said. They were upset. You don't know what you're asking. So here it is. They're still arguing after 3 years. Who's going to be the great? The Lord's been telling them, I'm going to go to Jerusalem and die. Luke 24, real quick. On the resurrection morning, who goes to the temple? Who goes to the tomb? The ladies do. Who did they see, talk to? The angels. What did they find out about Jesus' body? It's not there. He is, what's the word? Risen. Look at verse 17. The Son of Man must be, verse 16, he's not here, but is risen. Remember how he spoke to you when he was still in Galilee? That's the Matthew 17 context. Saying the Son of Man must be delivered to the hands of the sinful men and be crucified and the third day rise again. They remembered his words, and they returned from the tomb and told all these things to the 11, to all the rest. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them who told these things to the apostles. Verse 11, look at this. And their words seemed to them like what? Idle tales. How were they saying? Oh, you women are crazy. What's the deal? Why were they asking that question? What had Jesus been telling them? I'm going to go to Jerusalem. I'll be killed, but I'll raise the third day. Now there's evidence of it. And what are the disciples asking? Like, are you women crazy? Where did they get that notion? What does that show they were not doing all along? Listening to what the Master said. Who are they like today? The church today. Probably not. Are they not the same thing? All this stuff and not listening. Behold, verse 13, 2 of them were traveling, not the disciples, but part of the 120. The same day to a village called Emmaus, which is 7 miles from Jerusalem. They talked together of all these things which had happened. So it was, while they conversed and reasoned, that Jesus himself drew near, went with them, but their eyes were restrained, so that they didn't hear him. know him. And he said to them, what kind of conversation is this that you have with one another as you walk with and are sad? Then the one whose name was Cleopas answered and said to him, are you the only one in Jerusalem? Have you not known the things which happened to there? What things? So they said, the things concerning Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet and mighty indeed, and word before God and all the people, and how the chief priests and our rulers delivered him to be condemned to the death and crucified him. Look at verse 21. What was their problem that kept him from hearing what Jesus had said? Here's the problem. Here's the issue. Verse 21, explain, what is it? What kept them from listening to the truth? Verse 21. Where was their mind focused on? An earthly kingdom. So what are they doing now? They're leaving town. They're casting the chips. They're grieving. It's all hope is lost. They're depressed. Gone. What's surprising was what's said afterward. And certain women of our company who arrived at the tomb early astonished us. When they did not find his body, they came saying that they also seen a vision of angels who said it was alive. And certain of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said. They didn't see him. If all that is true, why are they leaving town, folks? Why are they leaving? Because he'd said it'll be resurrected. It looks like he might have done that. Why are they leaving? That's what grief does. What was their loss? Their goal, their vision of an earthly kingdom. All the glory returned to Israel. What they'd hoped for, shattered with a suffering Messiah. And so what did he do as we close out the lesson? Verse 25. O foolish ones and slow of heart to believe in all the prophets have spoken, ought not the Christ to have what? Most important question of the day. Ought not the Christ to have what? Suffered these things. Now, we don't have time to read the rest of it. But if you do, he started for the prophets and said, let me explain what it's all about now. And when he did, like Isaiah 53, I came to die on the cross for the sins. I came to offer salvation. My kingdom is a spiritual kingdom. And they got it. They were so enthralled, their heart was so opened up that they, on the same hour, took off all the way back the 7 miles to Jerusalem. They met with the disciples and said, we saw him, he's risen. But at the same time, Jesus shows up, they think that they've seen a ghost. What does he do for the disciples? Let me explain to you now what happened. They finally, after the fact, got to see the big picture. What happened wrong? He was telling them all along, this is what you need to be doing. But their obsession with material things kept them from seeing what? The truth about the mission of the Lord and their mission. The good news is, look at verse 44. These are the words which I spoke to you while I was still with you, that all things must be fulfilled, which was written in the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms concerning me. And he opened their understanding that they might comprehend the Scriptures. The goal of this day, these 4 hours of talking about grief and so forth, is to open your mind to the Scriptures as to the truth and nature of suffering. No one likes suffering, but it is a vital part of the human endeavor, and that provides the opportunity to learn the truth and to value the things that are most important. You cannot learn the value system of this and everything be peachy keen. That's not the way it works. What does suffering help you understand? The truth and value of things. Suffering is there only intended to do what? Make us value the things that are most valuable. After you've lost someone and you go to the cemetery or whatever, what Christian teaching can inspire you to hope? The resurrection. The resurrection. I'll tell you what happened for me. The early days, months, years of the death of my mom, my dad, my wife, all Christians, I thought about the past. of all the enjoyment, of all the fun things, of all the loving things we've done, that I was missing. When I think about my mom and dad now and my wife, I don't look back anymore. You know where the first thought is now? Where they are. Where they are. Talking about Richard and the good work that he did. There's sometimes the hard part, why would he call someone home that still knew so much knowledge that can help so many people here? You think he still has that knowledge where he is? Interaction between people who are redeemed? You think what he knew here, he still knows there? You think it might be possible, I'm just speculating, on someone, maybe an 18-year-old that died in an accident, only becoming a Christian 2 years, that had faith, but had just a small glimpse of what Christianity was. You think Richard could fill in the gaps? I think so. God uses people with what they know and have. So my own thought about he's preaching till he got promoted. As we all will be one day if that's what you want. There's so much to learn. We just scratched the surface of the things that are here. In the book of Deuteronomy chapter 8, Moses gathered the people together and said, let me tell you what all this was about. All the testing, all the trials. Here's the one thing I want you to learn. Anybody remember what it was? Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. What was true then is still true today. The answers are in this book. It's up to us to use it, learn it, embrace it, and share it with people. We got 10 minutes. It's now your time. The last closing questions and comments.
I was at a teen retreat that I got to lead and be upon, and I had a kid, not a member of this congregation, ask, and this kind of goes hand in hand. He said, I don't want to grow up, and I know I don't want to offend anybody. He says, but I don't want to grow up into a bitter old man. He says, I see a lot of that in my life, a lot of people that he knows. His experience with older people is that they're bitter and angry. And there's a lot of criticism in his life from his grandparents and older people that he knows, a lot of complaining. He goes, what is it to be a Christian if you're miserable? And I think a lot of it is because we haven't been able to deal with grief well. Oh. Grief breaks us. Grief turns us into, and God is so anti-grumbling and complaining. It was his complaint against Israel. You know, Philippians tells us to do all things without grumbling and complaining. How can we get there, right? You know, and I think that's the goal of being able to get through whatever we go through. But if we live the rest of our life complaining about all the bad stuff that has happened to us, what are we showing the people that are still here who need to see faith and joy and peace?
We're teaching their own lesson. At a lectureship at a school of preaching years ago in the early 90s, David Farr was the director. It was a whole lectureship was about evangelism. He made the statement, I thought it was original with him, but somebody else has read it since. He said, while our brotherhood continues to look for better methods, our Lord continues to look for better men and women who do what you said, who love. Well, of all the fruits of the Spirit, what's the first one? We know love. What's the second? Joy. 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 You can learn it. I spent 10 years and 4 months and 11 days in the Navy. That was a test. That's my Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego moment. But the thing that inspired me the most was there people looked at me and said, you don't drink? Never had my first drink. All the things I've done without. I mean, I told you what happened. I got my act together, started preaching and working in the church. I got awards. I was a sailor of the year for the boat. Voted the best guy on that boat. You know why? Because my heart was different. I cared for people, and I was joyful without the booze. They couldn't understand it. And so it's sad if you grow up and you don't learn the lessons, you can't help but be bitter, because when you get older, especially, my dad said when men get about 50 years old, they go over Fool's Mountain. That's how a lot of them start running around after young girls. Why? Because they've lost their image. You know, their wife doesn't, they can't turn them on anymore. Maybe somebody can, and they go do crazy things. They're unfulfilled. Their self-image is horrible. How do you fix that? How do you fix that? There's nothing in all the world that can help your self-image more than being a Christian. We're designed to be in the image of God. Jesus came in Colossians chapter 1 to be the image of the invisible God. Our goal as a Christian is to let his image be seen in us. And the more you do that, the more joy will be there. And see, that's what it is. It goes back to the disciples. If anybody, how good a teacher was the Lord? For 3 years he's taught them and they still blew it. That shows you how hard it is for people to listen. But along the way, there was a time to give them the big picture, and they finally got it and never ran again. They gave their life for that. That's what we've got to do. We've got to get there close enough to people, because you're not going to win people, change the church from here only. Even though I know he's a good preacher. I could have told you years ago he's going to be a good preacher. I knew. I could tell. After a while you get an idea. But I don't care how good a preacher he is. That's not enough. They have to see it in life, because there are problems that will come, and when members step up and show them what the church is supposed to be, that's powerful, folks. That's powerful. Some of the greatest people that changed me in my life, that were there for me, were not preachers. They were members like you. He figured it out. They got the big picture. And I'm here because of them. And they could be here because of you. That's your job. That's your privilege. Learn it, explain it to people, give them hope. Hope is what you look for as you're going through grief. I appreciate the comment. Anything else? It's 2:39. I'm done. Unless somebody else got another comment or question. I love being with you. It's been great for me. What thrills me is to see people like you. People listen at various levels of listening. There's inactive listening and active listening. You made my day. Thank you for that. You got good hearts. I'll always love you for it.